The last craft paper in the fiction writing course is a book review, and we'd like for you to kind of approach, a work of art, a book, a film, etc., and kind of approach it as you would as an artist, given that you've done some writing and that you are kind of becoming more and more familiar with narrative skill and craft. So you have a range of options here. You can use the course texts, you can review the course novella, or a series of films, etc. The assignment is available on Canvas. In this short presentation, I want to kind of give you a basic template and give you a couple of examples from a review of Angela Carter's The Bloody Chamber here. But first, to set up a template for the review, think about it as a 5 to 6 paragraph piece, 500 words maximum. Don't go over the 500 words. I don't expect you to. In terms of paragraph to paragraph development, a short opening paragraph introduces your central focus, and then a very focused summary paragraph that recaps or introduces the plot or opens some context for your review. You don't want to go into like a full summary of the piece. You want to concentrate on summarizing aspects of the plot or a character that's significant to your understanding of the work. You don't want to get caught into a situation where you spend your whole 500 words summarizing. So be very focused in the summary. Then you want to offer 2 or 3 paragraphs that offer some points of analysis or substantive points of evaluation, how you yourself understand the work or put it in the context of other works, and then a closing paragraph that kind of repeats or summarizes the central point from the review. Again, you want to concentrate on your analysis here, not on summary, and so focus on those 2 to 3 paragraphs here. Within your review, be sure to provide a clear description or summary, but note that this is not simply a book report. So you want to get to the analysis as quickly as possible. Maintain a clear sense of audience within your writing. You're writing for a general audience, so think about how this might be understood by other participants in the class. Build a concise version of the plot or a point of focus, again, like a character, a central point of the plot, a use of a particular artistic effect by the writer or director. Again, not more than a paragraph of summary here. And you can also use that paragraph to set up an understanding of the work's historical, social, cultural, or artistic context. How does it fit into the web set up by other writers, filmmakers, artists, etc. Example here is Marina Warner's review of Angela Carter's The Bloody Chamber, which has appeared in the Paris Review from October 2012. She sets context in her opening paragraph as such, and she tries to build an understanding of Carter's significance to interpretation of the fairy tale. As she writes here, fairy tales were reviled in the first stirrings of post-war liberation movements as part and parcel of the propaganda that kept women down. In this context, Angela Carter made an inspired, marvelous move for which so many other writers as well as readers will always be indebted to her. She refused to join in rejecting or denouncing fairy tales, but instead embraced the whole stigmatized genre, its stock characters and well-known plots, and with wonderful verve and invention, perverse grace and wicked fun, soaked them in a new fiery liquor that brought them leaping back to life. So she's going to set up her perspective on Carter's reinvigoration of the fairy tale with this opening to kind of build an appreciation of what Carter achieved within her writing. As you build your own perspective on your subject for the review, try to develop a clear, well-organized perspective on the work, versus just simply saying you like the book or not, or you like the movie or not. Build a central claim here. So you're writing with argument, or set up a directing focus, or maybe a directing question. What does Carter achieve in the work? If you were writing on Carter, how does this film fit within a series of films or other films from a historical moment? Develop an evaluation not of how you like the book, but how or why the book, film, or artistic exhibit works or engages you as a reader or viewer here. So think about your own kind of attachment to craft here as a writer. How does the artist use things like plotting or character development, setting or theme or point of view here? In what ways does the artist use particular artistic effects to tell a story? Organize the review around a central principle, that is, how does the work understand contemporary culture, history or myth, etc. In Carter's case, how does Carter redesign or re-affect the fairy tale and its influence? And you could also here perhaps develop an introduction to the work's complications or unanswered questions. So you can introduce the work and then think about the unanswered questions that it poses to other writers and or artists. So in Warner's analysis of The Bloody Chamber, she writes, curiosity about possible sexualities was a central theme here. The methods of attacking the genres, the fairy tale's deathly conformity, were multiple. Inverting them was one strategy, and Angela Carter does so again and again, especially in the enthralling close of The Tiger's Bride. Reclaiming abuse was another. Carter's fairy tale heroines reclaim the night. Carter sharpened the laconic chill of cruel fairy tales like Snow White with her splintering fable of jealousy and incest, The Snow Child. But she also cast nursery fairy tale on the warp of American horror. Edgar Allan Poe, whom she greatly admired, also conjured landscapes of ice and snow. They made her shiver. So she's thinking about Carter's artistic craft here. How did she reinvigorate the fairy tale? How did she make it new for readers? How did she, in particular, kind of rethink sexuality and gender and the ways in which characters inhabit their identities within these tales? And finally here, you want to develop an authoritative interpretation. So you're an author. You've been writing. So how does this writer or artist's work impact you as a writer and artist yourself here? What's its importance within a community of writers and artists? Be sure to include yourself in that community, because you've been writing. You do your own work. You do your own art. How does this work impact you as an artist? Here are a couple things to note. Don't apologize for your ignorance. Build a sense of expertise. So do a little bit of study. Maybe read some other reviews. You can quote other reviews within this. Just cite them and quote them. Build a little bit of a sense of expertise here. Read with authority. Build points of comparison, perhaps, with other stories from the book, other stories we've read or stories that you know from the past. If you want to compare the horror stories here to Edgar Allan Poe, build a comparison between Lovecraft and Poe. That would be great. And establish a context for the work. Again, how does Poe writing in the 19th century compare to Lovecraft writing in the 20th century? How does a Carter fairy tale kind of go off the rails from the fairy tales build a little bit of context, like Warner does in her review. And also you can note points of confusion or disagreement. So if you were deciding to review Helen Oyeyemi, any points where you were confused in the story, you can note those and kind of think about in what ways is that an artistic effect? In what ways, does that challenge the book, perhaps, in its final shape here. In Warner's review, she builds a sense of complexity and authorship by thinking about Carter's understanding of women and her relationship to feminism, which was complicated throughout her writing career. As Warner writes here, Angela Carter followed this book, The Bloody Chamber, with her most contrary and uncompromising essay, The Sadean Woman, which forms a diptych with The Bloody Chamber. Carter once remarked, "For me, a narrative is an argument stated in fictional terms," and her writing fulfills that unexpected definition. In this counterblast to the virtuous claims of feminism, Carter identifies the Marquis de Sade as an honest witness to the collusion of women with their own enslavement and subjugation. The Bloody Chamber also quests for emancipatory erotics, beyond subjugation, beyond prejudice. Red Riding Hood finds bliss with the wolf. Beauty is transformed into a fabulous beast. So Carter here is kind of is developing a complex feminism in her writing in the Bloody Chamber that comes out in her later publication of the Sadean Woman, and that's the point that Warner's making here, right? In what ways do gender roles kind of become more complicated in the fairy tales of Angela Carter? In what ways do the female characters in those fairy tales shock or surprise you? In what ways do they cause you to kind of maybe rethink your own attachment to gender roles and expectations? So Carter here is shocking you in some ways, and Warner wants to kind of make that connection within her analysis and review of the Bloody Chamber. You'll find your own points of complication and exploration to follow in your reviews. I look forward to reading them. Thanks.